Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Uncut History, live sometimes on Thursday nights here on Redoubt Productions. I am your host, Redoubt. Yes, that is the name I have bestowed to myself, and I'm sticking to it. And we got to play around with the camera, but I literally just turned the camera on. I had everything else ready to go, but I'm like the little camera on the laptop was not ready to go, which means you got to watch me play with the lighting for a little bit. All right, how's everybody doing tonight? We have Andrew. He's joined us in. Very good, very good. And yeah, be sure everybody to tune in tonight and chat because we are doing more of our presidential throwdown. This was an idea a couple of viewers came up with a few weeks ago. They wanted to do a knockout, drawn out like boxing wrestling tournament with all of our past presidents of our country. And I don't know how I can fully facilitate that other than, hey, we got a bracket and we're going to have you vote between two presidents and we'll just kind of go through the rounds. So be sure you're tuned in tonight because we're going to try to go through 3 different rounds tonight. And let's see here. I got to go over here, get the notes pulled up. Yeah, I have notes, so I sound semi-coherent tonight. This stream probably won't be too long tonight. I don't expect to go over more than an hour unless we get really sidetracked. Which, knowing us, that's very possible. Last time we were on the airwaves, we were talking about the Alamo. The start of this month marked the 190th anniversary of the Alamo. So if you have not had a chance to listen to our in-depth talk about that battle, it's not really in depth, but you know, for us, it was in depth. It's still currently available on the main channel. Now, keep in mind, I send all of the live streams we've done to a separate channel to archive them. And there's algorithmic reasons why I have to do that. Oh, don't worry. Those are just the dogs losing their mind downstairs. That happens sometimes. Especially when the dogs and the cats get very close to each other. One or the other just start going absolutely insane. Yeah, it's ludicrous. All righty. And we're on dead air now. Yeah, I'm still getting stuff organized behind the screen. All right. Yeah, I don't know where everybody else is, Andrew. It's a quiet night. I had questions if we were going to be streaming tonight, and we are, and it's pretty quiet. But I got a few other things I want to talk about as well. So here we go. I keep getting sidetracked. All right. So, like I said, we're going to do 3 different rounds of the presidential throwdown. The first one we're doing tonight, not that one. No, not that one. We're not there yet. How do I? That's like 2 play. How do I? What happens if I remove? Oh, StreamYards, what are you? Share. What happens if I do this? There we are. Okay, we're all good. We fixed it. Yay, we can go chronological order now. So the first one we're going to be doing tonight, if you recall from last time we were streaming, the first round we just did, it was George Washington and John Adams. You can all figure out how that went. Who's going to the second round. And I'm kind of worried now. I'm so in a fault with this bracket I'm using that we're getting a lot of presidential matchups, which essentially involve with the leading man in the left corner, and then who they picked as their hand-picked chosen one, since they didn't want to do a 3rd term because they wanted to not go beyond 2 terms. So they entrusted a young Padawan to carry on their good deeds. And usually they didn't do well with carrying those good deeds. And it falls apart after a term. And then we have a radical change in the executive branch of the United States of America. That always I've learned after today, that always seems to be the trend with our political history. We'll have a strong leader or a controversial leader for 2 terms. They don't pursue a 3rd term, or then they're not legally able to. So they'll pick a chosen one to carry out policies in a undeclared 3rd term, but 1st term for this Padawan. And then the Padawan is lame duck, screws it all up. Everybody gets angry, and then we have a big pendulum swift change. That's how American politics work, apparently. I've cracked the code after just an afternoon of reading. So, with that out of the way, we're starting out with Thomas Jefferson, our third president, versus James Madison, our fourth president. Both signers of the Declaration of Independence, or no, signers of the Constitution. My apologies. Jefferson's Declaration. I don't. Wow, I'm already terrible. Is James Madison Declaration? I don't. I mean, he signed. He pushed the Declaration of War. No, he didn't do Declaration. Okay, I think I saved myself on that one. I was about to be, yeah. Okay, I saved myself on that one. Okay, yeah, yeah. He was father. Yeah, he helped to draft the Bill of Rights. Not, oh boy, I would have. Oh boy, you're already watching me shoot myself in my foot. So let me go ahead and get the poll set up. If I can get myself over there. Here we are. Oh, I just heard myself speak. That's not good. Alrighty, here we go. Start the poll. I'm very low key today. It's been a busy week, guys. I've been like a endless chain of meetings. That's been how this whole week's gone. Except the one day where I had to run to DMV to renew my license, and that just sucks the life out of you going to the DMV. Presidential Throwdown. Yep, we'll just do that. Jefferson. There we are. All right, there we are. So I'm going to read down here. You tuning in can decide who you want to win in this bout between Jefferson and Madison. I'm just going to kind of go down, read a little bit, because their two presidencies are very much linked together. Thomas Jefferson, of course, elected in 1800. He will be our third president, inaugurated in early 1801. And this came after a very tumultuous period where we had Washington's very first presidential administration hand things over to the Adams administration. And by this point, the political landscape was already entering party systems. Adams couldn't do much to stop it from happening. He tried his best to maintain bipartisanship. It didn't work. Most people ended up siding with Thomas Jefferson come the 1800 election. And then you have a big fracture between the Federalist Party, which was concentrated predominantly in the New England cities. And then you have your, what they call the Democratic Republican Party. And actually that name really was a kind of jab made by Federalists toward anti-Federalists, basically saying, oh yeah, you're just as destructive as them revolutionaries over in France. And then, as all Americans do, when they are insulted, they take that name in stride and use it against their insulter. You know, the Yankee Doodle, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, we're never insult Americans and think that we're going to be offended. Now we pride ourselves in taking offensive material and spin it back into your face. So that's what happened with the Democratic Republicans. Mostly those folks, big landowners, but also a lot of farmers, a lot of small-time farmers that were involved with the Democratic Republican Party. Hey, Books and Battlefield, you're late. You will, don't worry, your punishment, your severe lashings of the wet noodle will be awaiting after the stream is over. How you doing, Books? How's New Jersey? How is the Big J? I haven't seen the Big J since October. So Democratic Republicans, they get control of the presidency with Thomas Jefferson and enter the idea of policy making that is Jeffersonian democracy. Essentially was that the American yeoman, the lowly American farmer, had the right to work their own land and to benefit for their families, that they deserved better representation. I mean, you hear this all the time. Everyone's like, "Oh, we need to get more representation to the minorities of the small class, this and that." Yeah, that was a thing they were twisting into their political advantage going back to 1800. Yes, Thomas Jefferson. Yes, he's standing up for the poor man. Yes, with his big manton, Monticello. Yes. Actually, as much as I'm grilling Jefferson, I won't deny I'm definitely somebody. If you ask me when it comes to like presidential policies over the years that I would align with, yeah, Jeffersonian democracy is definitely one. At least the ideal of it. I'm aware of the real ugly truths to it, but the ideal, we can always strive for the ideal. So Thomas Jefferson takes charge, and you see this idea of trying to provide, trying to provide to Americans, particularly those that are of land owning based, which land owning, especially this time, it goes in sync with farming. Um, because the Jefferson administration's probably most well known for the Louisiana Purchase. Jefferson, his cabinet, able to come up with the deal of the century, really, acquiring all this land west of the Mississippi River from France and essentially doubling the size of the United States of America overnight. I mean, if there was one thing that frustrated the United States from being a, oh, they're these, it's a fringe group from the British Empire to, oh, they're their own country, they're going to be their own regional power. This was definitely one of those momentous changes. And got to shout out local Western Pennsylvanian Albert Gallatin. He's up there. He's Secretary of the Treasury for Thomas Jefferson. Trying to teach the Democratic Republicans how to speak economics because they weren't too good at that. Not with the how we save money and how we use money and this and that. Yeah, they weren't the best at. They're like, we acquire land and then we sell it. That's how we understand economics. We don't understand this. What's this federal bank? No, we don't want a federal bank. They needed Gallatin. They really needed him to, in layman's terms, break down all these various ways you save money for state and federal operations. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Albert Gallatin. We actually went and visited his residence in Fayette County, Pennsylvania, one of the very early episodes of Retracing History. So some longtime viewers may remember that. So, yeah, but Jefferson's known for the Louisiana Purchase, double the size of the United States overnight. And essentially the idea was not too dissimilar, actually, from what the Washington administration was doing. We acquire land dirt cheap, and then we sell it for top dollar to the American citizens, and then federal government profit. It works great. So, and you'll hear that policy will continue to be used throughout tonight's program. I will promise you that. So, another thing Thomas Jefferson is probably well known for is the Barbary Wars. Now, I'm not saying war is a good thing, but we're not ever going to be intimidated by terrorists and pirates who raid ships and demand the cargo, the people, the ship itself, or a ransom over. I consider those terrorists because they're using terror to get their way. So, if you're going to do that, we could fight fire with fire. And that was the Barbary Wars. Oh, you're going to tell us that we can't, we can't come in and trade peacefully here in the Mediterranean. Well, if you're going to raid our ships and ships with our flags, well, how about we go and strategically overthrow part of your government? Been doing it since 1803, the Battle of Derna. Oh boy, it was a great time. One of the best of times, one of the greats of times. So, well, war's not great. The Barbary Wars was definitely a tremendous show of force by the United States and a reminder to the world that, no, we were not going to negotiate with terrorists even in 1803. So, that's also a good plus to him. Very good foreign diplomacy, strong foreign diplomacy. Now, keep in mind, Jefferson was able to broker, some of the earliest treaties, too, out in the Mediterranean that the United States had ever brokered on the world stage. So, you got that going. We already kind of talked about what the idea of Jeffersonian democracy was, which was expanding the voting rights of more Americans. Those typically were farmers that were both small scale and large scale farmers that were inclined to support the Jefferson administration because, hey, they're getting land. We need more land for our crops. Yes. And then something I'd probably say was not a good thing he did was the Embargo Act, which the idea, and hey, James Madison, you were involved with this, so you're not fully free of this. The idea of the Jefferson administration was basically we were getting pretty fed up with the fact, again, people were touching our boats and we don't like it when people touch our boats. Jefferson was the first president to make fully aware. He set the precedent of no boat touching. That became American policy because of Thomas Jefferson. But of course, you're probably very well aware of the impressment that was happening. British warships were stopping American merchant ships, boarding them, taking people and claiming they were British subjects that were trying to evade British service in the Napoleonic Wars, forcing them into British service. Some of them were truly were truly people that had gone AWOL. Others were not, mistaken identities. Jefferson's administration got fed up to a point where they're like, all right, fine. You won't let us go over there trade with France, and we can't even trade with you because we don't know if you're just going to board our ships. So here's what: embargo. We're going to put on an embargo. No more trading. How about that? No more good. Nope. We are not trading with you guys anymore. And that completely backfired because the United States was not on the scale yet to be fully self-reliant. I'm just going to be honest with that. As much as we like to say, yeah, we're just going to do our own thing. Yeah, then reality hits and all the prices start skyrocketing because, it's all domestic now. Oh no. So yeah, the Embargo Act was not such a good thing. It kind of it harmed the United States more than it harmed the economies of France and Britain because they both went, oh, you're not going to give us your goods anymore? Okay, great. We hope you wither away. That's probably what Britain was thinking about. It's like, oh, good. You're just going to starve yourselves from not taking our money, taking the British pound. Okay, fine by us. Let your revolution rot. But of course, Jefferson would not seek a third term. Instead, he would entrust James Madison with carrying out his idea of Jeffersonian democracy. And James Madison, some declared the father of the U.S. Constitution, for how much he was involved with trying to come up with some of the plans and trying to ensure the Bill of Rights was going to happen. Madison, he had helped to offer what was known as the Virginian Plan when the U.S. Constitution was formed. And really the idea was that's where you get the idea of free branches of government from. It comes from the Virginia Plan. Of course, it would take some modification. The New Jersey Plan had the Virginia Plan only supports wealthy landowners. It doesn't do, people more population. It doesn't do too well for us smaller states like New Jersey. So, maybe we need to have it more representative. And of course, you combine the Virginia Plan and you ride the New Jersey Plan and you get the Connecticut Compromise. And that's why the House has the seats it does and why the Senate will always remain 100 because it's supposed to be proportional and this and that. And it's all about loveliness. Yeah, the House is supposed to vary based on, the electors that you have available based on the population. And then you have the Senate, which will never change. That'll always be a constant 100 senators. So, yeah. So that's how you get that lovely thing from that everybody wants to bitch and moan about all the time every 4 years. That's where it comes from. And you can thank Madison partly for that. Not fully. He didn't do the compromise, but he got the ball rolling with the Virginia Plan. I'm rambling and sound like a nincompoop. That is fine. We had people join in, and I won't forget you guys that joined in. Keep chatting. I'll get to it when we end this round. Actually, I will mention it. So you bring up a good point. So Garrett's tuned in. Jefferson was an imperialist. He wanted the United States to grow and spread the ideals of freedom. I think he had the right idea, not by conquest, by success, and when necessary, stand fighting. Yeah, it's weird to call Jefferson an imperialist because I agree with you. I don't think the man was ever trying to get into unnecessary fights. He really didn't. I don't think he really liked fighting. I don't think he didn't want to use the military 24/7. Most of his biggest deals, they are through diplomacy. The only time that the military is thrown out by Jefferson is when, they didn't want to do it the nice way. Okay, we'll do it the hard way. So Jefferson wasn't scared to go the hard way in that route, but he always broached his biggest decisions in his presidency were definitely acquiring land or acquiring trade rights that were going to be advantageous for the United States. Maybe not in the 1800s when he was around, but he kind of could foresee the future a few decades now. So he knew, we got to get in the Mediterranean. We got to broker peace with some of these countries. We need this land. I know we weren't expecting to buy this land, but hey, we can't say no to this deal because think what will happen if we don't take it. Maybe we don't need the land, but Britain and up in Canada, they may come down and take it, or the Spanish will come up and try to hold it. So try to retake it. And there's a whole side tangent I could go on about how Spain was like, wait a minute, no, that ain't France's land, that's our land. And Napoleon's like, well, it was your land, now it is America's land. and I got money to go and fight all these battles. And then, Mexico just becomes Mexico. But I like your comment because it's actually to come back to something we're going to discuss later tonight when we get to a certain other president who has a lot of similar principles as I'd say Jefferson did, but where Jefferson was definitely more mild tempered. The other man we're going to talk about, oh, he is Dark Thomas. Let's just say that. I'm going to coin a president Dark Thomas. This is Happy Thomas. Thomas was a very mellow man in public and private, whole different story. So yeah. Oh, you're asking my hey Redoubt just knows. Is this supposed to be presented by RP, not presented by RP? Yeah, it is. Yeah, you'd be right about that. Yeah, presented by RP. All right, time to go back to second grade grammar. Off I go, guys. Actually, we're done with the stream. I'm going right back to enroll in second grade right now. Oh boy, can't wait for my grammar class. Thank you for recognizing that grammatical imperfection. Editor Chan missed that one. Me and Editor Chan will be having a talking to. How'd she miss that one? What was I saying? See, I just go on tangents. Man, I cannot stay focused tonight. I apologize. Again, been in a lot of meetings this week. Brain's mush. But James Madison will continue to lead Jeffersonian democracy into the 1810s. But you'll notice I'll have a lot listed for James Madison. And that's no disrespect to Mr. Madison. I think Mr. Madison I've found is like one of the most beloved men to be presidents. It doesn't mean he was the best president himself. It was just like, nobody had anything bad to say about James Madison. They're like, he's a really nice guy, but sometimes it's not, you don't want the nicest person in one of the most powerful positions in the world. And what he inherits is already a volatile situation when Jefferson leaves, because you have people, Democratic, Republicans, some that are very upset with how the British are treating American shipping, and they're also buying into some of the propaganda newspapers that's embellishing these situations. So they're calling for war against Britain because they feel like America's liberty is being tramped upon, that our right to self-government is that we forced Britain to agree they would give us in 1783 when we defeated them in the American Revolution and forced them to sign the Treaty of Paris. Well, we feel like they're going against all of those policies. And yeah, those war hawks were somewhat right. There were decades worth of frontier fighting between the U.S. and native tribes out there. But we know those native tribes were receiving support from the British Empire to kind of stale American expansion. So eventually the Warhawks in Congress will get their way and Madison will allow them to do it. All right, we're going to war with Britain again. And this time we're declaring it, everything. We're doing the whole thing. And that's the War of 1812. And boy, was that almost ended our country. It's truly a miracle the War of 1812 played out as its results were as indecisive as they were, because man, there were a couple points in that war where it looked like our very limited military was about to become non-existent. The Capitol was burned, as we all know. But hey, we got the USS Constitution out of it. We got a great, one thing's for certain, we had a pretty fun time on the waters during the War of 1812, but infantry-wise, not so much. But we got our national anthem that you heard to start tonight's stream. We got that out of this, so that's good. But yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The War of 1812 was one of the stupidest things the United States of America has ever gotten itself into. As much as I am into researching it, it's one of my favorite subject matters to discuss. It's just one of these things like, yeah, this was a bad idea. I get the merit behind it, but also if you just look how small, again, go back to the Battle of Lake Erie videos I did. Go back to the numbers we have. U.S. military, British military, night and day. And especially when we get to 1814, when Napoleon surrenders and is put into exile for the first time. Yeah, it's like, oh no. Oh, the full might of Britain's come down. Oh, I made books on Battlefield angry, and I know Garrett has opinions, but yeah, I agree with that though. Yeah, he definitely. A lot of people call him book smart, Mr. Madison. Definitely, he had like one of the best libraries from I've heard of any president. Both of these guys, Jefferson and Madison, are both of some of America's greatest philosophers. So yeah, they're definitely. I would agree with that. Definitely was definitely strong in mind. I still just think between Jefferson and Madison, I think Jefferson. Both men were very. I want to call them soft spoken, but from when I sound publicly, they were men of few words publicly, but it's because every word they said meant a lot, had a lot of weight to it. But I feel Jefferson was better at choosing his words, where Madison, he was a little quieter and a little, well, I want to let the system decide. This I made. Like, I believe in the Constitution. I want it to work to its fullest. So let everybody else have a say. Jefferson definitely seemed like a guy who was more willing to, all right, I'm going to be the leader. I'm going to tell you what we're doing and what we're not doing. Or I'm going to say, this is the direction we're going. Where Madison's like, okay, the Warhawks, we want to go to war. Okay. Sounds like a good idea. I don't see anything bad coming from this. Oh, I'm running away. Dolly, get the painting of George. Oh, here we go. But we got the national anthem. Yeah, yes, that's great and all, but we came this close to losing all of our, basically our government and everything. We were very close before the battle, before, we get to Fort McHenry and stuff. We were very close to the whole, what was really the breadbasket of our country being forever wrecked. So now I will be honest, though, I don't think the British ever had any long plan. I'd have to do more research on this about the 1814 Chesapeake Bay campaign. I don't think they had any long-term plans of like any occupation or anything like that, or, oh, we're going to dismantle the U.S. government. I don't fully think that was going to happen. That being said, there's still many negative impacts could have happened if the destruction continued into Baltimore. It definitely would have hampered the United States shipping abilities. Baltimore was that vital to the maritime industry in the country at the time. So you see what they did, wreck DC. It's like, oh, well, they took the seat of power out. They sent it into exile. Oh, now they're coming for our shipping. So yeah, we got pretty close to it being a much worse case situation. But, at the end of the day, we fought a few battles. We didn't gain any land. We didn't lose any land. I think that's a good way to end that. There's just a lot of early battles that I just can't help but keep saying the War of 1812, at least the declaration of it was, and the initial plans for the war were so stupid. I just find them to be very, very bad ideas. I'm sorry. We did, like, who there was thinking, yes, we're going to take Canada in a few days. It didn't work in 1775. What makes you think it's going to work in 1812? That's all I'm asking. In 1813. Okay, in 1814, it almost worked because by that point, we had General Brown and the U.S. Army had been heavily restructured. But man, those first campaigns the United States Army tried to do in 1812, I'm sorry. They should have fought them better. I fully agree. There's a time to take a stand. There's also maybe you need to make sure your military's bolstered enough. It's like we declared war. Now what? But I can actually argue myself off of that high horse and say, well, when we declared independence in 1776, what army did we have then? So I'll smack myself with my own counter argument if that'll make everybody happy. Yes, Armstrong, yes, very incompetent, yes. No, it's not just Armstrong. Yes, that's the top, but it keeps trickling down, and there's a lot of commanders that they had at the start of the war. It's just like, ooh, you really needed to rethink this. But by 1814, I do agree, we do get a lot of good commanders. Like, oh, the gentleman who was in charge of the defenses of Baltimore, which nobody really talks about. And I got to end this battle here soon, so we go to the next one. The gentleman who's like in charge of the land defenses, not at Fort McHenry, but like of the city itself, the militia commander, he was the Connell commander at Fort Mifflin during the Revolution, believe it or not. So yeah, he had experience in being put into clutch situations. So there's a case of a Rev War veteran who comes back, is much older, is involved in the War of 1812, but he knows what he's doing. It kind of is like the counter argument to poor General Hall out of Fort Detroit. Oh, he fought the natives he thought they were everywhere. He thought they were to the north, south, east, west. No intelligence was attempted. No intelligence gathering was attempted. Just instant, I am taking the word of Tecumseh and Brock and surrendering right here, right now. Okay. They got me. The War of 1812. You see, it becomes a passion for me. Yeah, but Winfield Scott, the dilemma of saying that, books, he really only makes his prominence known in 1813 into 1814. Now, I wouldn't deny maybe later on. I hope you're saying like maybe later on after the war, he would have been a candidate, but even still, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that, I would agree, but Scott just wasn't there yet during the Madison administration to go up to that level. A little bit later, like when we get to the 1820s, I would fully agree with that, but that's an interesting take, though. I do like that you brought that up. We did have Harrison, but again, I am sorry. I will stand on this hill. This is just one of those things I'll die on. There's many things about the War of 1812. Many people that need to be talked about that you're discussing tonight, and I'm not taking away what they do, but they had to go out and put their lives on the line. People like Harrison and Perry and Scott and Brown and all these other folks, because a good portion of the elected officials in the United States of America made a really reckless, really dangerous decision, and it put all of their constituents' lives at risk. And I think they could have gone about it a little bit better. Just saying. We're glad that there was men like Harrison around to kind of save the ass of the war hawks, is what I'm saying. So, yeah, lots going on, chat. I got to finish up this poll, and I don't want to forget to mention that Captain Gary, yeah, we went from nobody's tuned in to, I say one thing about the War of 1812. Where were you guys for the War of 1812 series of videos I did? Welcome. Glad you joined. But I see Garrett, of course, with our iconic claim of don't give up the ship.
$10, a lot of money.
Thank you, Captain Garrett. Thank you. And saying the famous slogan, the famous last words of Captain Lawrence. It showed Americans weren't punks. If not, we'd be the bullied going to the principal or teacher instead of kicking the bully's ass. You need an actual military. I'm just saying, we just didn't have it in 1812. We very rapidly mobilized by 1814, but when we went and declared war, and then we're all surprised, even Jefferson himself, taking Canada will be a mere few days. Wow. I would say, hey, you learn your lessons, except for the fact we learned these lessons during the Revolution. And then we forgot them. Nothing really changed in between the Revolution and War of 1812 about the Canadian-U.S. border. Nothing really changed. It was treacherous, difficult, and it was always greatly undermanned, the forces that went up there. It's just like, I don't know. It's just one of my I'm just like, you guys really just should have really fought this. Clearly, we had the naval. We had an unexpected naval advantage against the British. And that definitely is where we could fight them. Not disputing that. So definitely a show military force on the high seas. I don't think there had been any problem there. And we were already kind of doing that. You think about we were already kind of doing that earlier. And you could argue like the Quasi War, that was a very similar situation where President Adams, he left, he kind of left U.S. Navy. He's like, hey, those French ships, they threaten us or any civilian, you have permission to run up against them. You're good to go. They're being hostile toward us. You show equal force. So there's the Quasi War as a precedent, but you could have used that for justification of, okay, Britain, we've told you, you come in our shipping lanes again, you raid ship, we're firing at you again, and I would have been, but no, we instead full declaration of war. We're going to invade Canada on 3 different points, and all 3 campaigns fail by the end of 1812. It gets worse that winter. It just gets worse. There is no real recovery for the land campaigns until Harrison built Fort Meigs, to be quite honest. Alrighty, I'm going to end the poll before I get any more sidetracked. But thank you guys for tuning in, and I do enjoy this debate we're having about the War of 1812. So the poll ends. Let's see. What was the results? And by a landslide, Jefferson beats his Padawan. The Padawan was no match for his Jedi Master, and I kind of figured I was going, but they're both interesting guys. I think History of Waffles, he's done stuff about Madison, if I'm not mistaken. The Battle of Plattsburgh. Well, we're getting into 1814. By 1814, I'm fully in agreement that the United States finally had gotten its shit together, but not when we declared war in 1812. And that's ultimately why I am just saying was just not a good political move. We weren't ready in the spring of 1812. Yes, we defended ourselves. We can defend ourselves, but we really couldn't go onto the offense into Canada. Yeah, I don't think there was anybody in the crowd for Madison. Everybody's like, we like Madison. And I'm like, yeah, but Jefferson. Oh yeah, well, yeah. See, that's my point about Madison. It's like, yeah, but Jefferson. Andrew's like, oh my God, are we ever going to get to the other 2 rounds? We may. Boy, I can't wait till we get to the Harrison round. Because I think we got some Harrison, and I'm a fan of it. I am definitely somebody who's like, we need to talk more about William Henry Harrison because he didn't get his time to shine in the presidency. Yes, but we did it to ourselves this time around. World War II, we kept trying to say, no, we don't want to evolve. We'll give you support. We don't want to evolve. Please don't bring us in. Because we bring us in, we're bringing the full wrath of God against you. And then Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And then the full wrath of God came down upon them a few years later. So, and to be fair to I'll give you counter one, but when it comes to the American Civil War, the United States, they didn't, Lincoln was the one that went on the offensive. The federal government went on the offensive against Confederate states, and they felt they were going to quell the idea of secession, and it didn't go that well. We won eventually, but yes, we definitely got our asses handed to us in the first moments of the American Civil War. So there is a good counter armor for you, but so yeah. Alrighty, let's get to the next one. Maybe I won't get as heated this time. We're going past the War of 18. We're going into the era of good feelings, guys. Do we all feel good about ourselves now? We're gonna the era of good feelings. James Monroe is here to make us feel good. Yeah, the era of good feelings. And why is it called the era of good feelings? Well, because of the War of 1812, because ultimately, although as tumultuous it was, and as controversial, at least in the House of Redoubt, that it is to declare it, Madison saw it through, led to the Treaty of Ghent being signed, status quo's returned, and everybody felt really, really happy after the Battle of New Orleans. There was some guy down there won this battle after the treaty was signed, and everybody heard it at the same time and kind of went, hey, we won the war. We delivered this crushing defeat against the British. And oh, no bones about it. The Battle of New Orleans was a crushing defeat tactically. We did a whole live stream about that a couple Christmases ago, believe it or not. But after 2 terms and after a war, Madison was done. The Federalist Party by this point had completely collapsed. I mean, there were Federalists, yes, but nobody actually went on the street and claimed themselves a proud Federalist. No, everybody was a Democratic Republican. You want to be on the winning side after the War of 1812. So when Mr. Monroe becomes the 5th president of the United States, we enter the era of good feelings. And something I was reading, I didn't really think about before today. Monroe's cabinet was really interesting for how bipartisan it was. He was trying to get Northerners and Southerners. He's trying to get former Federalists. He's trying to get the most staunch Democratic Republicans. He really gets everybody, at least on his cabinet, to show bipartisanship and really cementing this the era of good feelings. And I mean, he'll definitely champion getting to you. He's definitely going to discuss, hey, we really should be using the federal government. You know, there's a lot of power here. I know we don't want it to become, you know, a dictatorship or anything, or, you know, rule with an iron fist, but we can use it to help a lot of America's infrastructure. You know, we got these funds here we can collect from taxes and, you know, give us better road networks. Just an idea. And then and again, not everything I put in on the battle cards. I'll talk about it. Another thing I put on the battle cards means this is a good thing for the presidency. It's just something I need to note sometimes because you can't get around it. And one of the things you can't get around is that during the Monroe administration, we had the Missouri Compromise. And this is, again, part of the era of good feelings. This idea, okay, we're going to try to maintain the balance. We just have one major party right now dominating. So the idea, of course, with the Missouri Compromise was, which every state that was going to be admitted going forward, you know, for one slave state, I can't speak. Sorry. The Missouri Compromise, essentially, when they bring Missouri into the Union, they apply that line. The border for Missouri basically becomes a dividing line between, okay, everything north of this is going to be free. Everything south will be slave. And we will, and the Oversimplified does the best version of this, where he's, you know, he has a running gag with the Missouri Compromises and a couple other compromises, like, and then the debate over slavery was never brought up again until it was again. So what essentially happened was this was supposed to keep the balance in Congress, the Missouri Compromise. So Missouri's brought in as a slave state. Maine comes in at the same time. And the boundary of Missouri is essentially going to be the rough guideline on, okay, if a future state comes in, is it free or is it slave? This really cements that southern states are slave states, northern states are free states. And for the time, it did work. It did work for a few years, and it kept the era of good feelings going. And after 2 terms, James Monroe, he would turn over, you know, they would end after 2 terms, there'd be another election, the 1824 election, one of the most cutthroat elections. What could be worse than 1824? Wait till 1828. So after a very tight election, because again, everybody likes each other. Everybody's a Democratic Republican. And I really at this time need the meme from Civil War of, you know, we're all Americans here. Uh-huh. What type of American? That kind of defined the 1824 election, because yeah, they're all Democratic Republicans in name, but oh boy, you're definitely starting to see those regional politics rear their ugly heads again. And John Quincy Adams will be elected as the 6th president of the United States of America. One of the most controversial elections, probably the most controversial up to this point, because there was not a majority in the popular or electoral vote. So it had to go on the floor of the House. The House of Representatives decided this election. And basically, you know, you could just imagine how that comes into favoritism at that point. And John Quincy Adams ends up winning. Legally, he wins it. You know, you go through like, yeah, the Constitution set up for the situation. You know, people like Monroe and Madison and Jefferson and Adams and Washington, they'd all fought about this. Just this is the time it's finally going to happen. Unfortunately, not a lot of people, not everybody in the United States agreed that was the case. And many are like, what do you mean he got in? I voted for that general from New Orleans. You guys said he had the popular vote. You guys said he won the electoral vote. What do you mean Adams is winning? Well, we couldn't find a majority. What do you mean? And of course, that what do you mean is going to start building some resentment in a portion of the Democratic Republican Party, and it'll eventually spiral into the it will come to just the Democratic Party eventually come the next election. And then meanwhile, you had I'd say your more Federalist minded Democratic Republicans. I know that's an oxymoron, but like I said, the Federalists never really disappeared. Your upper class city, your civic leaders, your lawyers, all those, wonderful city professions. Okay, I know a lawyer is not a city profession, but a lot of lawyers concentrate in cities because county seats tend to become cities because of the courthouses and all the other stuff. Just give me some break here. But people that didn't like the Adams' most fiercest opponent, they started veering and became the National Republicans. So yeah, you're definitely starting to see new battle lines being drawn. But John Quincy Adams, he'll take office, and he really actually tries to fulfill a lot of what Monroe was already trying to achieve. I mentioned about the federal infrastructure. Well, Adams sees a lot of it through. The Chesapeake and Ohio Canal is going to be chartered during his presidency. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad is chartered during his presidency. Yes, both the leading canals and one of the leading railroads are organized in the presidency of John Quincy Adams. That early for railroads, guys. That early. So he was very much an advocate for using federal funding in infrastructure projects. And I would argue both these men here were very well skilled with the pen. And they were very eloquent speakers. The problem is where I see that the presidency of James Monroe is kind of the exclamation of a long political career of molding the United States of America. It's the climax of it. John Quincy Adams is very strange because you hear a lot about John Quincy Adams before and after his presidency, because he's like one of the few outliers who he treated the presidency as men like Washington intended it, most likely, which was, it's just another job, guys. Somebody has to make the, sign stuff. Somebody has to say yes or no on these bills. Somebody has to be at this desk. It's just a matter of fact. So, when I'm done here after my term, I'm going to continue my own interests. I'm not, I'm not some extraordinary person. I will keep going on and representing my local district, this and that. And Adams keeps on in politics all the way up until the 1840s. And that's why, where did he bring it up earlier? Both of you guys are bringing it up. Garrett and Books and Battlefields. I will make sure now to make the ballot. You guys were bringing up about how, John Quincy Adams' probably most famous moment in his life is actually being involved with the Amistad court case about the ship of the slave ship that ran aground, the slaves that liberated themselves. And there was a whole drama over, well, do we grant them do we grant them free citizenship? Do we consider them slaves? Do we send them back into servitude? What do we do here? And of course, Adams will defend them against the United States of America. So that's what John Quincy Adams is most known for. And that happens many years after his presidency. So yeah, he's one of them weird figures where everybody remembers him and he did a lot of really important things, but his actual presidency, it's only 1 year term and you don't hear a lot about. Start the poll. Okay. I'm going to start the poll, guys. I promise. I won't forget. I won't forget before the 1 hour mark. John Quincy. I got to make sure I spell with the Q. James. All right. The poll for this round's up. Okay. I didn't forget it, guys. Yay. I didn't forget it. Yay. I get a cookie after this, right? I get a cookie. Okay, here he was. Yeah, the film Amistad is incredible. Anthony Hopkins portrays his incredible arguments before the Supreme Court. Yeah, that's what's sad is it worked. Unfortunately, when I say it's sad is there's a good portion of the American population didn't agree with that. It shouldn't have been controversial, and it became such. Yep. John Quincy Adams was the first child of a president to take office. He definitely had a better understanding. Yep. Oh, wow. The Body and Odor Railroad. Ouch. I'm just seeing if I missed anything else. Oh, we went on a tangent about little. Oh, wow. Man, I'm glad I stopped that rant when I finally did. Man, I blame McClellan for extending Civil War. Little Mac, more like Little How. Oof. Oof. So, yeah. Is there anything else I had written about Adams? No, I reached kind of. There is more to say, but like, well, we are trying to keep this to be a presidential throwdown, so kind of letting the presidency itself decide. So, yeah. Unfortunately, Adams, I think his legacy just as president is just really marred by, sadly, people being upset that the Constitution worked right. That's sad to think. We were mad because the Constitution did what it was supposed to do. And the various federal infrastructure upgrades. And I'm always a man for like, okay, more for, improvement of our infrastructure. I'm always an infrastructure man. I always feel the federal government needs to be careful of how it decides to spend things, but bolstering our infrastructure, rail lines, road networks, all that stuff, making it last long term. Good idea. Man, I wish we would do that nowadays. Sounds like a bunch of commies and monarchists. Yeah. At the same time, it's incredible. A communist monarchy. It's incredible. So let you guys vote in there. And don't worry, we have one more round and we will officially get into the elephant in the room. You probably all know who I'm talking about. So get your votes in now. If I can get back to, be sure to get your votes in. Your vote counts. This is the one I was most curious how it was going to go down, because how it lined out, like Monroe and Adams, they're both very interesting figures, elegant speakers, great writers, great philosophers. But Monroe got the, hey, there are good feelings. And then, Adams, just got this ugly campaign and aftermath of his election that just kind of just overshadows what he actually does. And it kind of just keeps hamstringing him. Everybody's just being bitter about it. So there's people in his own party that are basically trying to like, I don't want to support you because you stole the election, this and that. So, and Adam's like, we did what my father and everybody else voted for. This is how it was supposed to go. They chose me, and that's kind of how it went. I don't get me wrong, there was still probably favoritism in play. The Speaker of the House made like the final decision, everything like, okay, if I make this deal, there was backdoor deals even in the 1824 election, but it's kind of the Constitution was ready for a contingent election. So, and we had Wootage 8434 just popped in and makes a pretty good argument I would agree with. The 1824 and 28 elections was when the country began to break apart. And yeah, I would, the idea, the founding fathers' idea of how this country is supposed to be, yeah, I'd agree. It kind of died. It started to fragment in 1824. It died with 1828, and then what happens in the 1830s. So voting will end 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the results are in. Wow. 3 people voted. I was hoping we'd get a little more in there. I told you guys it was going to end. I told you. But John Quincy Adams actually wins over James Monroe. I was not expecting that, to be honest. I was like, I knew it was going to be close. But James Monroe, yeah. That's why I'm not going to say anything bad about the future. I just like, that's what I said for the idea that the founding fathers first envisioned. Their idea, because many of them were still alive. Some of them were still alive during these elections and what was going to follow. Yeah, they kind of really watched it all kind of crumble into partisan politics. although they kind of had a hand in it, to be fair, too. I'm looking at you, Adams and Jefferson. You know, you guys had your own partisan issues. So, yeah. All righty. Time to pull up the last one. Here we go. I can only imagine how this one's going to go. Now, I thought actually about we should have done I should have reworked it where it would have been Adams versus Jackson to replicate those brutal elections. But honestly, I was thinking, I know there's people that do like shows. I think Vlogging Through History did it where they went through like how they would vote in the presidential elections. I've had a few people ask me to do that, and I was just like, I don't feel comfortable doing it. I wouldn't be opposed to doing that for the 1824-28 election and kind of letting you guys, because there's multiple candidates. It's especially for the 24. It's not just Adams and Jackson the first go around. There's other candidates. Like I said, the Democratic Republican Party, I think they threw in 4 different candidates when this was going down. So let me know if that's an idea. Maybe we could do as a bonus stream in the near future. We'll go in detail, analyze the 1824 election, and I'll let you guys decide. And let's see, maybe we get a different result and we don't have to send it to Congress again. So food for thought. But yes, the time has come. The time has come to talk about King Andrew the First. But first, I gotta get this in. So here we go. All right. So this guy, Jackson, funny guy. Was a lawyer, law figure out in Tennessee. Moved there actually after, from the Carolinas. Said reportedly he was whipped by British officers, a young lad during the Revolution. And then he got himself into the military when Madison's splendid little war broke out. Led Tennessee men. Then he ended up leading whole armies to fight the Creeks. And then took some cotton bales, turned an alligator into a cannon, hired a pirate. One of those statements were true, by the way. And unloaded upon the British in the Battle of New Orleans. And from that became a celebrity. I am wondering if you were in after the War of 1812, who was more famous? Who was the most famous celebrity out of that war? Jackson or Harrison? I'm genuinely, like, if you were living in the moment, what would have been more of a household name? I'm thinking Jackson probably would have been. Jackson seemed to have a bit more better press, especially because how monumental New Orleans was and where it occurred in the record books, where Harrison was kind of, everybody knew who Harrison was and his men and greatly admired him, but I do feel he kind of gets lost a little bit in the shuffle afterwards in discussion before they chose him as president. And you want to know why they choose Harrison as president in 1840? Because the Whigs were trying to replicate what the Democratic Republicans were doing in the 1820s. But as you'll notice, I relabeled Andrew Jackson not a Democratic Republican, but as a Democrat, because by this point is where the Democratic Party is formally organized. Yes, the one we know today, like the entity. That's how far it goes back. It's a little weird because they keep saying, "Oh no, the Republican Party is the oldest." No, it's this one. I'm just going to get out of the way. I love how people try to over here say, oh, well, the Democratic Party has changed. It's not truly what it was in for the 20th century. Because you hear people call the Republican Party the grand old party. And they always say, well, that's the oldest continuous political party in the country. I disagree with that on a historical, and I will say directly political level. And that's all the more I'm going to say on that. And that's just because there's a lot of policies that you're going to hear about just going from the 1820 Democratic Party that they do resonate, I feel, with the core values of the Democratic Party even today. Just going to put that out there. So, Yeah, the Democratic Republicans have fragmented coming to the 1828 election. The Jacksonians, or in this case, I'm just calling Democrats, they rally around Andrew Jackson, this war hero. You know, he has all this legal experience, and he's represented Tennessee in multiple degrees. You know, he was a local representative, he was a senator. You know, he's done all sorts of different stuff. He was a judge for Tennessee at one point. It was great. Yeah, he knows the ins and outs of politics. He's not just getting into the presidency because, hey, look, war hero. No, he knows how government works inside and out. Yep, he's the last Revolutionary War veteran to be president of the United States. And well, I feel the first go around, it was a good, he was trying to be chivalrous. Everybody was mud raking him. He loses the election. He's upset about it. He knows his constituents are upset that he loses. He kind of rallies around that, spends 4 years basically gathering, increasing his following. The Jacksonians are mudslinging John Quincy Adams, sets up for an ugly 1828 election. And then Jackson wins. His wife dies before he can get into the White House. And at that point, kind of his mission is to rain revenge upon everybody who had been ruining his public image for the past few years. And we get a very decisive leader. Take that again as you will. Jackson is probably one of the, let's say this, I'd say probably for the 19th century, he's the single most controversial president. I didn't even put him above Lincoln in terms of controversy because, yeah, maybe in the time of the Civil War, Lincoln was the most controversial, but like in reflection nowadays, yeah, I think Jackson's probably the most controversial president we ever had in the 19th century. I don't think that's too much of an exaggeration. So he gets elected, and what does he do? Well, after riding his weight of populism into the seat, to the presidency, he bolsters the power of the executive branch. He's vastly using more executive orders than previous presidents had. He's definitely got an imperialist streak, and this is where I said, where how there was a president I'll call Thomas, Dark Thomas. This is Dark Thomas, where Jefferson was definitely had, I'd say, more Southern gentle. He had that good Southern gentlemanship about the deals he was making, the sweeping land grabs he was making, and the diplomacy he was organizing. Jackson, he just kind of went right for the throat. No holds barred, Jackson was. And then, of course, we get into, you can see I've listed a number of things he's in. Sorry, guys, I got an ad that just popped. I don't know where that ad came from on my computer. Greatly apologize. So yeah, for the executive orders, he's definitely increasing what the executive branch can do and how it can influence Congress and policy making. He balances the budget. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things to his credit. He actually figured out how to balance the budget, which was the old school method of we grab land and then we grab it dirt cheap or by kicking the people out of it. And then we sell it for top dollar to the American people and we make bank. Us Americans really like that program for some reason. And of course, that did mean the Indian Removal Act. That's where that comes about. And again, these are lands that he had led soldiers into, not just during the Creek Wars, but the Seminole Wars as well. And it's like, fine, you won't agree to give it to us. We're going to take it by force. And then he force organizes and orders that all these indigenous people, they're going to have to hike it all the way out to a foreign land and resettle. And that's the Indian Removal Act. And that would be carried out not just by Jackson, but his chosen successor over on the right. And as Woodage just put in, Jackson's the only president to really do two big things in his terms. They were both bad things with the Indian Removal Act and getting rid of the central bank right after the U.S. got out of debt. Yeah, the reason he gets rid of the federal bank, the Second National Bank of the United States, really came down to the fact that the Jacksonians, they had much distrust over how federal funding was going to be used. So their solution was, well, if we can't trust, if we can't trust if the Whigs get in power, if we can't trust the former Republicans, if they get in power, we can't trust nobody with this money. So we're going to burn it. We're going to burn the federal bank to the ground, and we're going to entrust the states again. This was an act of actually trying to support state rights. Really, it was what Jackson was trying to do. He's like, don't want the federal government involved. The money's just going to get screwed up. I'd rather keep the money all safe across the hundreds of banks in various states. That would come back to bite the United States, not so much during Jackson's administration, but his successor again. Yeah, and I would agree with that fully. Yeah, Jackson was trying to impress. He was definitely following Jeffersonian democracy, or his vision of it. It was far more intense and far more hell-bent than Jefferson. Jefferson was definitely a more a person willing to compromise. With Jackson always made his mind up when he walked in the door, and there was nothing you were going to do to change his mind. Thing 1 or thing 2? What are we having a independence for Independence Day or libertarians? Give me a little more context for that question. I'll try to answer the best of my abilities. Books and Battlefield. I mean, are we talking about maybe like Jeffersonians? Were they a bit more libertarian minded? I could argue. I won't say yes, just because the libertarians of today and the whole concept is a 21st century concept, and yeah, we're dealing with 19th century, so I'm just gonna try to avoid doing it. Oh, giving back power back to the states. Yes and no. I don't know how I don't think I'm the person the best to answer that. I apologize. So let me see what else. Yeah, because Jackson did a lot. I got a list here, guys. I got a big list. Oh, I also rather mention the spoil systems. It's popularized by Jackson, and Jackson's justification was because they felt that the whole 1824 election was fraudulent, that it was corrupt, this and that. Corruption had happened in the House of Representatives and Congress abroad. So to avoid that, instead of having cabinet members and officers in Congress carry over from one administration to another, Jackson's idea was you're fired. You're fired. I'm going to bring my good friends in. I trust them more. And I feel every few years we need to shake up, and we got to change the cabinet members. We got to change the officers. We got to change the who I'm aligning with in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. We got to do that every few years because that keeps corruption down. You're going to see where that goes in a few decades. I don't think, so there's pros and cons to that. And then let's see, we keep going down here. Yep. Oh, and tariffs and nullification. Yep. The idea, and Jackson, to be in his complete credit, he actually, everybody talks about tariffs with Jackson's name. Initially, it was something that the Jacksonians of the former Democratic Republican Party were really into. That, hey, we increase tariffs, that'll force production domestically. Now finally we won't have to really rely on foreign support anymore. That'll definitely encourage people to invest in infrastructure here locally. But by the second term, he definitely softens on the tariff idea because he definitely sees the negative impacts it has on parts of the country. Particularly, he sees what's happening in southern states. So while he'll continue to support tariffs more so he can keep support, I think, in Congress, because there was radicals in Congress that were like, yeah, more tariffs. And Jack's like, okay, maybe not. Let's lower the tariff rate. Lowering the tariff rate was not good enough, though, for South Carolina. And that eventually led to a situation where South Carolina, former Jacksonians in South Carolina, mind you, like John C. Calhoun, they basically threaten outright secession over it. They basically tell Jackson, we believe, based on precedent, and they were talking about precedent set by other states who nullify the Alien Seditious Act that John Adams had put in, that we believe that these are unlawful, they're unconstitutional, these tariffs, and simply we're not going to enforce them anymore. We're not going to force them at our custom houses. Go to hell with you. And Jackson's like, okay, I get you may not like the tariffs. I'm trying to help you guys out on them, make it easier. You can't say go to hell to the federal government. Jackson was making plans to organize a federal force that, if the situation arise, would go to South Carolina and essentially quell any uprising. It never got to that point, but the threats were exchanged. And of course, an infiltration crisis is one of the favorite subjects of people when we get to the American Civil War. So there it is. So yeah, that moment's terrified everybody, bipartisan actually. And again, caused more friction amongst the Democratic Party because, it's already losing people. Now it's solidified around Jackson and more people break off because we don't know. Jackson's a little bit of a madman, but there's other people that love Jackson. So I don't want to be completely there's people that love him. They love his time as president because, he is a solid leader. There's no disputing that this is a man that you could rally around very quickly. He was going to make decisions. You didn't have to worry about him being indecisive. You didn't know where he was leading you, but you knew he was going to make a call right then and there, and he was going to stick to his guns as long as possible. He was going to see if through hell or high water, whatever decision he was going to make for you and the rest of the country. And then Jackson would end up, of course, he would not seek a third term. He would end up choosing a successor, and that was who was then his vice president at the time, Martin Van Buren. The only president in American history whose primary language, his native language, was not English. His family spoke German. Now, he was born in the United States, of course, but he came from a German background. They, of course, very quickly learned English. But yeah, as a young boy, German was his first language, believe it or not. So yeah, Van Buren's he's one of them like trivia. You want to know his legacy because of all the trivia questions you can get out of him. But he's going to carry on what I call Jacksonian democracy light. So he's entrusted to carry on a lot of Jackson's policies. But on the other hand, Van Buren is much more suave than Jackson is with handing Washington, D.C. Let's just put it that way. He had a good career as a lawyer and in the politics. So he knew what words to say, to make friends with the right people and who not to make friends with, So Van Buren is very underrated for the political connections he could very quickly make, the political alliances he could forge. And that's kind of what ultimately leads him getting into the presidency. So yeah, he doesn't follow Jackson's lines tooth and nail, but he is there to also ensure that his idea of how the country's supposed to be run is carried out. Unfortunately for Van Buren, all hell breaks loose for him. No sooner he gets in office, the Panic of 1837 is going to take full effect. And this great national recession is partly a result of Jackson's policies. Is because he dismantled a national bank, everything defaulted to state or private banks. And then at the same time, Jackson realized, hey, we're trying to solve our national debt by selling all this land off that we took from native tribes. Everybody's given paper currency, and back then, paper currency wasn't very popular. Still isn't today, to be honest, because what's backing that? That's telling supposed to be a note saying this will give you this will give you a right to go to this bank and get this hard asset out. Are you sure all those metals that you're saying are backed by those dollars are actually in those banks? There was way too much speculating happening during the Jackson administration. I'm not talking about the White House itself or Washington, D.C. I'm talking also just common people as well, taking advantage of the situation. So you had a lot of people that were getting a lot of loans, getting a lot of paper currency and using that to buy all this land. And Jackson's like, that's suspect money. We're going to ensure going forward that I'm going to make an order that you have to pay with gold or silver if you want federal land. And that kind of just caused everybody to spaz out. That brought sales of lands to a grinding halt. Then when you try to go back to investigate these people that took out all these loans or were paying with currency, they found, hey, look, none of that was fraudulent. Oh no, they took out too much. Oh no. And then banks collapsed. And since there was nobody to bail them out, like in other recessions, They just closed up outright. Banks were just folding outright. Yeah, we always hear about the Great Depression. The Panic of 1837, I think, was worse, way worse, because at least we had a few. There were a few safeguards, not much in 1929, but there was nothing in 1837. It just whole businesses, it was, yeah, that was the Great Depression as well. But man, the 1837 panic is just rough, and nobody talks about it. And yeah, it did not look well for Van Buren because he had inherited a lot of Jackson's policies, and he was just never able to get out of the 1837 panic, that get that off his record. So by the time we get to the 1840 election, the Whig Party had consolidated by this point. And of course, they're opposed to Jacksonian Democrats. The Whigs, they have a lot of support. They have a lot of support, not just in northern cities. So I don't think it's surprised I say, Jacksonian Democrats had a lot of support in the Deep South. Not necessarily in cities like Charleston for obvious reasons, but definitely when you get into the rural countryside, the Deep South, and especially when you get up into Tennessee, get into those middle states along the Ohio River Valley, that's where a lot of his support's coming from. So very similar from Jefferson's support, where by when we get to the Whigs in the 1840s, they're going to start consolidation, anti-Jacksons, Democrats disassociating with Jackson midway through his term, more mellow-minded people. There is like a part of the anti-slavery sentiments that do build with parts of the Whig Party, but the Whigs never make it part of their party platform, really. It's just one of them. There was literally a gag order at one point put on talking about slavery in Congress, like around this time period. So nobody put that on their political platform, but you could kind of figure out who lied with where. So come for the 1840 election, Van Buren, he's going to go up against Whig's nomination, which was William Henry Harrison, which they did that because, hey, war hero Jackson got the vote of the poor farmer. Let's repeat it. Even though we're going to do it, they did to a T, complete with let's transform a wealthy plantation owner into a poor cabin dweller. But that's a story for another day. I probably didn't do Van Buren justice, and I greatly apologize. I don't know too much about him, and I do want to learn more. This guy's always interested me the more I read about him. And he would continue to try to pursue the presidency. He didn't give up after the 1840 election. He tried, at least, I think he tried two more times, if I'm not mistaken, one or two more times. And he's definitely part of, as we build toward the American Civil War, the build in the 1840s and 50s. So he is important to that. And I think we'll touch more about him in another stream. So how you guys doing with the voting? I did remember to put the ballot up, right? Make sure. I'm kind of losing my mind. So guys, if you're tuning in, I'm going to give you guys one more minute. Be sure to vote Jackson or Van Buren. Make your decision now. I know you're out there, and I know you want to decide. And hey, your vote would be, to my knowledge, your vote's anonymous. So if you're worried about revealing your politics, all you got to do is just put it in the poll there. You don't have to state it in the comment section. You don't worry. I'm sure you'll eviscerate me because I'm terrible when I come to debates. I'm just like, oh, can't we all just get along and then get killed by the Martians and when Mars attacks? I've not heard about this. One of the greatest storytelling nights in U.S. history. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that. Yeah, and then I'm not gonna have a time. I don't work because really this is after his time in the office. But yeah, Van Buren created the Free Soil Party, which was anti-slavery, which was the idea, what the idea of what the Republican Party would be formed upon. So yeah, he definitely was an influencer in creating the Republican Party that we know about later. I'm not either, as I've learned tonight, and we will fight to the brutal end over over the declaration of war in June of 1812 by the U.S. Congress. I think when it comes down to after tonight is more like, I definitely would say if I align with one, it's the Jeffersonian democracy, and not, again, like I said earlier, not because I know of the shady stuff that happened and, situations where things didn't work out all the time for Jefferson, but it is the ideal of it. That's like, look, we want to make sure that in their, the yeomen will have their rights protected. Every yeoman will have their rights protected, that they have the right to have their own property so they can protect, they can provide for their own families. Yeah, it's just a good idea, just I think that's something I think everybody can agree to, right? Right? Also, I fully have always said I am very critical of the Federalist Party and their dis the Federalists, in my opinion, not all of them, but men like Alexander Hamilton were very disconnected from the reality of the United States of America at that time in the late 1700s, going into the early 1800s. They definitely were isolated to their city lives at that point, and you didn't really understand how it worked in not just the rural countryside, but especially the new half of the country that's going to be included in the years to come, like Western Pennsylvania and us farmers who needed that whiskey. We needed that whiskey because it was the only way to take crops to market or sell it in a certain way without it going bad. I'm not bitter. I don't have ancestral bitterness toward Hamilton and the Federalists. I'm not bitter at all. Anyways. All right, get your votes in. Last chance to vote for the final round tonight. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we end it. And another close one. Jackson wins, but Van Buren got 40% of the vote. I'm very impressed. I was not expecting him to get votes, to be honest. So, again, but like I said, the more I learn about, he's one of those guys I'm learning more about every day. So I do want to do more research. He definitely seems like a guy who'd be cool to go, because I think his house is preserved by the National Park Service up in New York. So that'd be a cool place to go. And I like the obscure stuff, the stuff that not many people know about. But yeah, Jackson's one of them figures where you want to like him because of, he's a good decision maker, not in the sense I agree with his decisions, but he will actually make the hard decisions. He will stand by his decisions. He will fight to the end. He shows that on the battlefield and in political office. So he's great at presenting himself. But man, I mean, there's just some decisions a lot of them just kind of go, well, that backfired eventually, if not immediately in the 1830s. A few decades or a few centuries later, like, yeah, that wasn't a good idea. But it's one of them decisions you're like, but you can't take away that Jackson probably was the most controversial United States president of the 19th century. And he definitely was one of the most influential presidents of all time, showing the full power of the executive branch for better and worse. So yeah, that's where we're going to end it tonight. Just a recap of how the Presidential Throwdown went. We had, I guess I could do this. Jefferson defeated Madison in a landslide. And probably I would say it was the most surprising result tonight. John Quincy Adams beat James Monroe. Good on him. Good on him. Even though it was probably our poll was just as controversial as how he got into the actual presidency. And then last but not least, Jackson wins, but it was a closer battle than I think he was expecting. So that'll wrap up. I was originally going to show you some history videos. I'm going to be honest, guys, I'm pretty burnt. I went down a rabbit hole earlier. So we'll save that for a future live stream. I have a playlist I'm building. I just kind of want to highlight. And, I'll probably post them. I'll probably just post them after stream's over on the Twitter. Just a couple videos I just recommend you guys checking out. I'll just shout them out. Well, I got a little more energy. I got a little more wine in here. Let's not wrap up tonight. Let's get a couple videos. That would be bad. That would be unbecoming of Redoubt to quit halfway through what he said he was set out to achieve. I'm going to achieve it. But first, I got to clear the deck. I'm enjoying this. I'm glad Michael Archangel recommended doing these. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm learning new details. You're also getting chances to grill me in the chat on my opinions. It's great. Nice, lovely discourse. But let me go over here. I can't find my bookmarks. It sucks when you can't find your bookmarks. Yeah, it's gone. Where were those bookmarks? Oh, they're here. Oh, they went into the Alamo folder. I was wondering where they went. Yeah, this is the dead air part tonight. This is why I was like, oh, I don't think I should do this. No, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna show these fangs, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna fall asleep. Alrighty. Gotta go here. I got just, I don't think you guys realize I have like a massive folder on my web browser, and it like goes back to like 2023, and it's for like most of the live streams we've done, and they're all marked by dates. It's crazy. Got that. All right, and let's just detach the studio. Nothing bad happens. Yeah, it is a stack of stuff. It's a digital one. The physical stack of stuff's over here and over there and in the shelves of the desk here. Yeah. All right, I think I got it. All right, no, that one. Share screen. Which screen? The screen. Yes, I would like to share this screen. You see it? There's the screen. Behold the screen. Do you like the screen, guys? I like the room. Why, thank you, Books and Battlefield. I try my best. And it looks great because you don't see the floor. We all know as historians what goes on the floor. More books. That's our emergency storage unit. For more books, you put them on the floor. That's not what I wanted to do. He's streaming tonight. Oh, that's good. D-Day Cobra, yeah. Alrighty, so now I'm being visited by the cats. So I just want to go through just, I want to talk a little bit about, you always hear about people complaining about how everything sucks on TV or sucks in the movie theaters or how music is crap or, just in general, it's like, oh, here we go again. They're going to go on and they're going to lecture how we need to be better, how we got to do better. The millionaire actors and actresses that live in Hollywood and, how they're totally in touch with the common American. Yes, totally. In their gated communities in Beverly Hills. And they're going to come out and, tell us that we must appreciate their new 3-hour slog fest. It's art. And it's going to tell you all that is wrong in the world and how you need to be a better person. And it's completely backwards. And if it's not backwards, storyline wise, well, then it's just completely insufferable to sit through. So I've noticed like everybody's always talking about, well, how are we gonna save Hollywood? How are we gonna save the television? How are we gonna save Western storytelling? Well, I'm gonna tell you this much. One way you save it, you just let Hollywood theoretically, metaphorically, I should say, burn. Yeah, you let the Hollywood movie industry system, which is over about a century old now, you just let it quietly collapse. It's on its natural way out. Because I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't really watch television shows. I don't really watch, not like in your sense of I don't tune in like, oh, I don't know. Let me think of it. Oh, Glenn Powell is starring in this movie. I'm going to go see it. I'm not like that. Maybe if Nicolas Cage was in it. No, never mind. Anyways, But you know, I don't see out what Hollywood is going to give me. I'm not waiting for Amazon Prime to give me something. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go on the computer. I'm going to go to YouTube, and I like history, American history videos, and I want to see what real stories people can bring to life. Now, I don't claim I represent the United States of America by any means, the general American audience, what their wants and needs are. I'm just speaking about myself, and I'm saying what's on most streaming services and what's shoved into movie theaters. It ain't my cup of tea. So why am I going to pay $40 to be miserable when I can go for free right now? Thankfully, go over and I can type History with Waffles. American Civil War battlefield walking tours. Our primary focus on History with Waffles takes you to small battlefields and large to tell the story of citizen soldiers and places. We cover how other events in history connect to American Civil War, interviews of leading historians, authors, and actors. This is a history channel on YouTube that allows the viewers to tell us where to film. We walk through history with you from the battlefields of Gettysburg and Fredericksburg to the Underground Railroad and collaborating with history content creators. So, my point is, I am not waiting for somebody in a wealthy mansion in California to represent me in a movie or show. I'm just going to go search for content creators that are making the stuff I already want to watch anyways, and I can watch it for free. And if I really like their stuff, I can like it. I can subscribe to be notified when I get new stuff out. And hell, if I really want to make sure they can go out and make these videos, I'm going to give them a donation because I want to watch their stuff because I just think they're that darn good at telling these stories. So that's my little micro rant there about anytime I get a question about, oh, the future, how do we fix Hollywood? How are we going to fix storytelling? No, you don't fix storytelling by fixing Hollywood. You let Hollywood rot and you just let the new generation of storytellers take up the reins. You can do a lot with just a smartphone like this. Now, I think Charlie at History of Waffles, I think you got a regular filming camera, but you know, my point still stands. So sorry about the rant, and sorry, History of Waffles, for ranting about something semi-unrelated on top of your YouTube channel. I didn't mean to use your YouTube channel as a soapbox. I greatly apologize, but I like your channel and I like your stuff. So I just want to say this is what I usually tune in every Saturday for, which it's kind of nice right now because we do here in Redoubt Productions. Usually we upload Saturdays at 5 p.m. History of Waffles usually uploads at Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. And I'm liking that because it's kind of, I'm hoping, causing like a set audience to kind of go from one stream over to another stream. It'd be really cool if we get something like for like 6:30 to start, airing stuff live. So we just keep it going for the whole evening. So, that, just kind of, it's an evening of history, evening of real historical stories that matter to us even today. One of my favorite things he did recently, he did a video on, believe it or not, he went down to Drury's Bluff along the James River, just outside of Richmond. And this is one of my favorite videos he's done. He went out and explored the fortifications, the Confederate fortifications that are down at Drury's Bluff. And I've seen photos of them before, but it's really cool. You just get to go out and just walk you're getting to see from his perspective, walking the field. And I will say, if I'm not your cup of tea, and I fully understand why, because my brain is so spastic. I go down the rabbit hole so quickly in discussion. I lose the plot so early and end up giving you history lectures about something unrelated to tonight's subject matter. I understand I may be a lot to handle. If you're looking for a silver storyteller and somebody who can stay on target, definitely check out History of Waffles. He has I guess I want to say he has a tremendous cadence with how he delivers the stories he's discussing and how he explores the site. They're very calm, slow paced, and get some beautiful scenery shots as well. But this one in particular, I did not know that the USS Monitor was at Drury's Bluff. The famed ironclad the U.S. Navy built in early 1862 only survived 1 year, and everybody knows about its battle in Hampton Roads in March of 1862 against the CSS Virginia. I did not know that it actually, that it also served at places like Drury's Bluff before the year was over. So that was really cool news to me. Hold on one moment, guys. I don't think, was it not Sharon? I just saw a dark screen of death, and that wasn't good. Maybe if I do this. There, how's that about? That should work. Okay. Okay, that should work. Now you should be seeing the History of Waffle's face. Sorry if I've been talking for an hour and you haven't seen his face. Sorry about that. Yeah, his stuff's been really good. He did something recently on Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, famous for being the colonel of the 20th Maine on the extreme Union left flank in the Battle of Gettysburg. Chamberlain on to become a general in the Union Army, and he got the most graphic, painful wound I've ever heard described to me. You need to check out his video. I knew about the wound, and I knew it was a groin shot. I didn't realize how long that Chamberlain was suffering that long for the rest of his life from it. It definitely made me reevaluate what I say about Chamberlain. I'll just say that. So yeah, definitely consider checking out History of Waffles. I tune in. You see, probably I do my premieres at 5. He does his at 5:30. I'm usually, once I'm done, just hanging out with you guys in the chat for my streams, for my they are kind of streams, my premieres. I'm usually right over there watching his stuff. So I definitely recommend checking it out. It's up to you if you want to do it or not. I mean, what I'll say is if you want to experiment with it, maybe do for 1 or 2 weeks. If you feel that you lose your audience, like you're not getting as many views, then go back to doing Mondays. Because don't lose your audience just to line up on a Saturday. I just found that my audience, I'd been doing Saturdays so long unintentionally that I'm like, well, I kind of built it in so I can promote it now. That's the only reason I just chose, okay, Saturdays at 5, and then it just kind of happy little accident. I know this History of Waffles doing it at 5:30 and just kind of all lined up. So that's something to consider. But that is your decision, books. So let's see what happens. If I jump over to Journey with Murphy, no, I have to stop. Why StreamYards? Why? It is not. If I'm going to pay, it was it like 40 something a month for StreamYards, so I can keep like the access to having the clips and everything. Can StreamYards do one thing? Can they allow me to just have a simplified way of sharing a page so the video and audio and everything will play? Instead of this, I have to go to share screen. I have to go to choose what to share with StreamYards. I can do it through a tab, I can do it through a window, or I can do the whole screen. If I want to play the video, I actually play it. I got to go pick an individual tab, and I got to repeat the process, even though I have the tabs lined up at the top. And it would just be nicer if I could just pivot from left to right. You can't always get what you want. That's what Mick Jagger always tells me. So yeah, by the way, the links there if you have not already, consider subscribing to History of Waffles. Next up, Journey with Murphy. This guy I discovered, I want to say it was about like half a year ago. I found him from his videos on California, believe it or not. Because I was looking for a history vlogger who, I guess, was just looking for something different. And it's one of these ones, I think it was his stuff from the Mexican-American War, California, that first popped up in in the algorithm. The almighty algorithm gifted it to me. And I got all excited because I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about California history other than the basics, and I'd love to have a ground view perspective. So yeah, this is one of his older videos, Battle of San Pasqual. And yeah, there was fighting in the Mexican-American War in California. It was a relatively smaller theater compared to the big stuff that'll happen in actual Mexico, but there was fighting out there. But since then, he's done a lot of stuff. He's done videos about the National Road, which is I love talking about the National Road because it's not too far from me. A stretch of it in Pennsylvania is. He went down to Cumberland, did a video. He's done a lot of stuff in Maryland lately, believe it or not. Like he visited the Maryland State House where Washington actually resigned as commander of the Continental Army. That was really cool. So he's been in a lot of really cool subject matters you should check out that nobody else has really covered yet. That's what's cool about it. He definitely has a wide interest in American history. It's not just exclusive to one conflict, but he started out, like I said, I found him from the California and the Southwest videos, but now he's doing stuff in the Midwest. He's been doing stuff on the East Coast. He's going all over the place. So I definitely recommend his stuff, especially if you like History Underground or Project Pass. If you're like in that type of format of videos, he's very much the same format. But yeah, definitely check it out. And he apparently has been doing social media stuff a lot longer than the YouTube. He's very into documenting the final resting place of all the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So he actually has a blog he's kept up about all the stops he's made for that. So I will go ahead and drop in a link to his channel. Definitely consider subscribing here. And it's been cool to see his channel's really grown just in the past 6 months. I think when I started following him, I want to say he had like 2,000 subscribers, and now he's up to like 8,000. And I was in about 6 months, if I can recall. So that's been cool to see it grow so quickly. I was one of the first one. I consider myself a plank owner. And one more we're going to talk about tonight before the night is over. If I can make it look. Yeah, like I said, I got to go down through here. Got to do all the steps. All the steps. For those that know, when did Razorfist change his name to Rageaholic? I know it was a while. I saw it earlier in my subscriptions. I know that was a while ago, but when did he do that? Like, when exactly was the name change? Or am I just going crazy and it's always been Rageaholic? Maybe. I may be a little crazy. Just one of my life tangents. All right. Last but not least. And last but not least, we're going to talk about books and battlefields. Hey, yeah, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, books. Yeah, I saw I commented earlier. I'm like, hold on, books. Don't worry, we're gonna talk about your channel. So hopefully I'm not making you feel awkward or anything. But here's your channel. Here's Books and Battlefields channel. So you know he's one of our regular followers here in most of our live streams. And his big thing that he does, of course, he's going out to historic locations. He's documenting a lot of stuff. He's been doing mainly stuff around New Jersey, but he's done a few other stops as well. I know he's done stuff up in New York, doing stuff about like Saratoga. One of his earliest videos was actually about the Battle of Plattsburgh. But he's covered a lot of stuff, a lot of little skirmishes he's lately covered from the Revolution, smaller battles that you don't hear about. Like this one right here. Yeah, this was one of the recent ones. The Battle of Chestnut Neck, which would happen in 1778. Because you get a lot of these battles, like after the American Revolution, after Battle of Monmouth happens, the British Army of General Henry Clinton is kind of confined into New York City and the surrounding countryside. And the Continental Army of George Washington is kind of forming a ring around him. And what you have for the next 3 or 4 years is brutal raids, no big battles, just raiding operations. That's where the Battle of Stony Point in 1779 comes from. So both sides are trying to raid each other's outposts until the stalemate can be broken. So that's where the Battle of Chestnut Neck comes from. And he goes out and visits. There's not much really preserved there anymore, but he goes and shows you the monument that's out there and tells you. And the big thing he also does, he tries to do, he'll go out, and the reason it's called Books and Battlefield, he goes out with either primary or secondary sources and reads excerpts from them on location. So either eyewitness accounts of what happened, he's reading word for word on location, or he's reading authors' interpretations. And I believe, if you're not mistaken, you post those video. I think you said like some of these books you use, they're available for purchase for like a secondhand bookstore. I know you always have a link for a bookstore in your videos. So and I really like that idea. That's a cool promotional way. If does good for the bookstore, does good for you, keeps people going back and forth. So yeah, definitely consider giving Books and Battlefield a viewing. He's been supporting his channel very, very firmly the past few months. So definitely consider if you want to give some love back to him. It's right there. His links in the description. So yeah, my point is, I ain't waiting for Hollywood to save storytelling in the Western world, at least here in the United States of America. My interest in stories are history focused, real stories about real people and real events. And I'm so interested by those ones because those are the ones that impact the world I live in today. I don't want to hear somebody in a mansion talk down to me how I don't understand. I don't get it. You don't get it. I admit, yeah, I live in 2026. I have all these nice amenities that none of the presidents we talked about tonight had at their disposal. But you know what? At the very least, I'm willing to go out and learn about them, see the sites they saw, the locations they were at. I get a feel for what their world was like. You up in your big Ivy Manor, yeah, you don't try telling me I don't understand. I have no interest in giving you my money anymore. I'd much rather give my time, energy to individuals that are going out there in their free time, no less, to go out and tell true American stories. So that's what I'm doing. That's my entertainment. If I have any downtime, it's usually spent Sunday afternoons or Sunday evenings watching all free channels and many more I mentioned, just like I would a television show 20 years ago. The future is now. There is no waiting for the rescuer to come and save us to keep the established system working. The established system is going to collapse for multimedia storytelling. The big conglomerates, they're going to either collapse, erode, morph into something different. So, yeah, stop denying that it's happening. And also notice who is always trying to deny it's happening. It ain't us. It ain't the lowly workers of America that are denying it. It's the very people who live in those Ivy Towers who know that any moment now, since we can go entertain ourselves much easier than by paying money to watch you guys entertain us, we'll take our money and our time elsewhere. You should always be careful. You always should be careful with how you're talking to us lowly people, because we decide how you ultimately get paid. So that's my rant. All right, let's go have a revolution. We will begin by raising the "Don't Give Up the Ship" flag. As we know, that is the symbol that Redoubt Productions is on the warpath, as Captain Garrett addressed earlier tonight. So we will start with that. We will raise it all along the western and eastern seaboards in defiance and a message sent that Redoubt Productions is rebelling against the system. Rebelling it by using a corporate website based out of California under stream to you tonight. Oh, well. I could dream. The Roman Coliseum. Are you not entertained? Alrighty. Well, hey, thank you guys for enjoying tonight, dealing with all my rambles and tangents. I hope you had fun. I hope you may have learned something out of all those rambles tonight. I feel I have. I at least learned one thing. One thing at a time, as my voice completely goes hoarse. So, new video this Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be talking about the strangest Revolutionary War markers I've yet come across. It's going to be an interesting talk. A lot of history involved in a relatively short video. We had all the bases in this next one, so I'm looking forward to letting that premiere. And then next week, we should have a video out. It'll be about Civil War veteran graves here in southwestern Pennsylvania. I'm not going to tell you what cemetery yet. You probably already figured it out from the video I posted last week about the Stone Bridge and where that's located. Same proximity. But we'll be talking about several Civil War veterans next weekend is the plan. Fingers crossed. And then we get into April. And I know that my plan is in the future to get out to Gettysburg here real soon and do slew of recordings, a lot of different stories I want to tackle. Then I can upload that piecemeal throughout the spring and early summer. And then we'll swing back into doing something historical. So if that sounds interesting and you want to be notified when those videos come out, be sure to subscribe here to Redoubt Productions. You'll be the first notified when a video goes live or when we're hitting the airways with Uncut History. If you want to watch our back catalog of live streams, because I don't actually save them long-term on the main channel, in the link in the description below is the link to Redoubt Replay. That's where all the back catalog of our older live streams are. And there's stuff there. We actually did a week-by-week breakdown a couple years ago about the Overland campaign for the 160th anniversary of that. So that was some of my favorite stuff I've ever produced for his channel, live stream or recorded videos. I do recommend checking those out. And if you want to go the extra mile and support his channel, fortifying this bastion of historical preservation, you can go to our Ko-fi page, links in the description below. A small one-time donation or a monthly donation is appreciated. If you choose a monthly donation, you will join the Garrison. That is our membership program. You usually see their names appear either in the description below or at the end of pre-recorded videos. Those folks, they help to fortify this bastion of historical preservation, and by doing so, Garrison members get first access to all videos that I post. And depending on the video, some videos there's stuff I have to cut, can't put in the final run because it'll just be too long or, in my opinion, too obnoxious of a video for the general audience. So sometimes the Garrison members, they get access to deleted scenes, bonus material, photos, all sorts of stuff like that. So if that interests you, that's where the Garrison is. Link description below. But thanks to everybody who's watched tonight, hit that like button, who's chatted tonight, and will catch us in the replay. And then let's see here. Oh, just a have a good night readout. Stay tuned. I'll be looking to do a doubleheader Monday and then the 20th and 31st in Virginia and then in Gettysburg for the festival. Very good. Very good. Good night, Garrett. Oh, you're too kind. I wouldn't call this a great show. I would call this the show where Redoubt got really angry about the War of 1812 for some reason. So, thank you guys for watching, and until
farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain.